I stood between four full-grown wolves and a man with a gun. Rain hammered down around us in the Washington wilderness, the temperature dropping fast. Marcus Brennan's finger rested on the trigger, his face twisted with 12 years of rage and pain. Behind me, Shadow, the largest wolf, jet black with amber eyes, positioned himself to strike. One word from me, and he would attack. One squeeze of the trigger and everything would end in blood. But to understand how we arrived at this impossible moment, we need to go back 2 years to a cold April morning when I was 25 years old and stumbled upon 4 dying wolf cubs huddled around their murdered mother. I made a choice that day that broke every law and challenged everything a small town thought they knew about love, loyalty, and what it truly means to be family. The wolves had returned after being given their freedom. They'd come back. The question was, why? Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching. From now, let's continue with the story. My name is Emma Catherine Walsh, and I'm 25 years old, though my eyes carry the weight of someone who's lived much longer. I live alone in a log cabin 15 miles outside Timber Ridge, Washington, a town so small its population barely reaches 1,200 souls. The cabin sits deep in the Cascade Range, where pine forests stretch endlessly and spring rains can turn trails into rivers without warning. This place belonged to my grandmother, Martha, originally. She's 83 now, living in a nursing home with early-stage Alzheimer's that's stealing her memories one day at a time. The disease cost $4,800 a month, money neither of us has. I inherited the right to stay here, but not the deed. That still belongs to her, and the bank sent me a foreclosure notice 3 weeks ago. I owe $4,200 in property taxes I cannot pay. I survive on what little I make from my wildlife photography blog, maybe $200 to $400 a month when I'm lucky. This morning I checked my bank account, $347. That's all that stands between me and homelessness. The cabin is sparse. I heat only the main room with a wood stove because I cannot afford propane for the furnace. Photographs line the mantel, my mother's warm smile, my father in his forest ranger uniform. Those were happier times when I had a family. Now those photos are all I have left of them. My mother, Sarah Walsh, died in a car accident when I was 19. I was pre-med at the University of Washington then, planning to become a doctor. 2 years ago, when I was 23, my father Daniel died of lung cancer. He was a forest ranger at Gifford Pinchot, beloved and respected. I dropped out senior year to care for him as he faded away, watching another parent slip through my fingers. 847 days. That's how long I've lived without them. I count every one. Each morning I wake up wondering why I should bother getting out of bed. The isolation has made me lean and watchful. At 5'7", with auburn hair, green eyes, and freckles dotting my pale face, I look like my mother. Sometimes I catch my reflection and have to look away. My only visitors are Dr. Ethan Cole, my father's best friend, and Deputy Rachel Torres, who checks on me monthly as if I'm a welfare case. Until today, I had no reason to keep living. I had been hiking for nearly an hour that April morning when I heard it. A sound that made my blood run cold. High-pitched whimpering, barely audible above the wind, coming from somewhere beneath a massive, fallen pine tree. I stopped walking, my breath forming clouds in the cool spring air. The temperature had dropped to 45 degrees overnight, and my fingers were already numb despite my thick gloves. The sound came again, too small for an adult animal, too distressed to ignore. My father's voice echoed in my memory. Never walk past an animal in need, Emma. We're all just trying to survive out here. I approached cautiously, my boots crunching through wet leaves and fallen branches. Fresh tracks marked the area. Something large had been here recently. I pushed aside the frozen branches and peered into the shadows beneath the tree, 4 small forms huddled together in the darkness. Gray and black fur, eyes barely open, shivering so violently I could see their tiny bodies convulsing. They couldn't have been more than 2 or 3 weeks old. Their condition was critical, dangerously cold, obviously weak, struggling for every breath. "Oh my God," I whispered. "Babies." I looked around frantically for their mother. Animals this young wouldn't survive long without maternal care. Then I saw it, a larger shape 20 feet away, partially buried under fallen leaves and debris from the recent storm. My heart sank as I approached. An adult female gray wolf lay motionless, her beautiful coat matted with dried blood. A bullet wound had torn through her chest just behind the shoulder. The blood trail in the dirt told the story. She'd been shot, had tried desperately to reach her cubs, and died just short of them. I knelt beside the corpse, rage and sorrow burning in my throat. A brass .308 rifle casing lay nearby in the leaves. Some poacher or rancher had shot this mother and left her to die. It was illegal to kill wolves in this area. They were protected under the Endangered Species Act. But that didn't stop some people. The wolf had been dead for at least 2 or 3 days, her body already stiff. The cubs had survived by nestling into their mother's corpse for warmth, but that warmth was gone now. They hadn't eaten in days, had probably nursed until their mother's body grew too cold to provide milk. Looking at them, I knew their chances of survival without immediate intervention were exactly 0. Without their mother's milk and warmth, they would die within hours in these temperatures, especially overnight when it would drop further. I knew the law. Keeping wildlife without a permit was a federal crime, especially wolves. The penalties were severe, up to 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. The right thing to do was call Fish and Wildlife Services immediately. But I also knew what would happen if I made that call. The nearest wildlife rehabilitation center was 180 miles away in Oregon. By the time they arrived, these cubs would be dead from hypothermia and starvation. And even if they survived transport, they'd likely be euthanized anyway. Too young for successful rehabilitation, the officials would say. More humane to put them down. I knelt in the wet leaves, looking at those 4 dying babies. The largest one, dark gray and black, lifted his head weakly and looked at me with clouded eyes. He couldn't understand laws or boundaries or endangered species regulations. He only understood that he was dying. My father's words came back to me. "Sometimes the right thing and the legal thing aren't the same, Emma. You have to live with your conscience, not the rule book." My mother's voice joined his. "Every living thing deserves kindness, even when it's hard." I made my decision. I removed my thick jacket, immediately feeling the cold bite into my skin through my flannel shirt. Working quickly, I wrapped all 4 cubs inside the jacket, bundling them against my chest. They were so cold they barely moved. I could feel their tiny heartbeats fluttering like trapped birds. "I've got you," I whispered. "You're safe now." The hike back to the cabin took 90 minutes through difficult terrain. I took a different route than I'd come, instinctively covering my tracks. The cubs stayed motionless against my chest, and I talked to them the whole way to keep myself from panicking. Without my jacket, the cold penetrated my layers, numbing my arms and face. My fingers lost feeling. My legs cramped. But I didn't stop. When I finally stumbled into my cabin just after noon, I was shaking from cold and exhausted. But the cubs were still breathing. I'd broken the law. I'd probably ruined my life. I'd definitely complicated everything. But looking down at those 4 tiny lives bundled against my chest, I realized something. For the first time in 847 days, I had a reason to wake up tomorrow. The first week was pure survival mode. I fed the cubs every 3 hours, day and night, barely sleeping. That first evening, I called Dr. Ethan Cole in a panic, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "Emma, what's wrong?" His voice was steady, familiar, my father's best friend, the man who taught me to ride a bike. "I need help. I found wolf cubs. 4 of them. Their mother was shot. They're dying, Ethan." The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. "Emma, are you insane? Those are wolves. Protected wolves. Do you understand what you've done? I couldn't let them die." Another long pause. Then, "I'll be there after dark. Don't tell anyone else." Ethan arrived just past midnight, slipping through the trees like a criminal, bringing puppy formula, syringes, and medical supplies. His face was grave in the firelight as he examined each cub. "If anyone finds out I'm helping you," he warned, "I could lose my license. You understand that?" "I know. I'm sorry. I just couldn't let them die." The smallest one, a female with light gray fur, wasn't responding well. Ethan shook his head. "That one might not make it through the night. Mix the formula with egg yolk. Feed them slowly with the syringe. Keep them warm. That's all we can do." The largest cub, dark gray and black with a thin scar already visible on his muzzle, refused to eat. He tried to bite my hand with teeth barely developed, scared and aggressive. I spent hours coaxing him, speaking softly, being patient. Finally, after 2 in the morning, he accepted the syringe. I cried with relief, then fell asleep on the floor beside them, too exhausted to make it to my bed. By the end of that first week, all 4 cubs had stabilized. Their eyes opened fully, showing different shades of amber and gold. They began to crawl, making small yips and howls that filled the silent cabin with something I hadn't felt in 847 days: life. On day 10, I decided they needed names. The largest male I called Shadow for his dark coat and the way he already seemed to lead the others. The second male, pure black, I named Ash. The independent female with striking gray-white fur and unusual blue eyes became Storm. The smallest, the one who'd nearly died, I called Dawn for her silver-gray coat that reminded me of morning light. Shadow bonded with me most strongly. He followed me everywhere once he could walk steadily, slept at the foot of my bed, watched me with an intensity that seemed almost human. One night, on what would have been my mother's birthday, I broke down crying. Shadow crawled into my lap and licked the tears from my face, whining softly. "You understand, don't you?" I whispered, stroking his soft fur. "You lost your mother too." By the second month, the cubs had grown rapidly, weighing 12 to 15 pounds each. Their baby teeth came in sharp. They started eating solid food, ground meat that I could barely afford. My bank account dropped to $127. I skipped meals to feed them. They played roughly with each other, howled at night, and needed constant attention. I moved everything precious into my locked bedroom after they destroyed my boots and shredded the couch cushions. The near miss came in week 7. Deputy Rachel Torres made her monthly welfare check, knocking on the door without warning. I panicked and shoved all 4 cubs into my bedroom, but they howled loudly at being separated from me. Torres frowned through the screen door. "Emma, you got dogs in there?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "Just fostering some puppies for Ethan. His clinic's full. Those don't sound like puppies. Husky mixes. Vocal breed." Torres studied my face for a long moment, her dark eyes knowing. "Your father ever teach you it's not smart to lie to law enforcement?" After she left, my hands shook so badly I could barely hold my coffee cup. I was running out of time. That night, Ethan delivered his ultimatum. "They're getting too big, Emma. Someone's going to notice. He paced my small living room, agitated. Marcus Brennan was asking around town about wolves yesterday, about increased activity in the area. Who's Marcus Brennan? Local rancher, big operation. He's got reasons to hate wolves. Ethan's expression darkened. We need to contact a sanctuary in Idaho. Get them proper care. They're not ready, I insisted. They'll die without me. And you'll go to prison if you keep them. Then I go to prison for helping you. He grabbed my shoulders. Emma, I made a promise to your father to look after you. This isn't looking after you. After Ethan left, frustrated but still loyal, I sat on the floor with 4 sleeping wolf cubs around me. Shadow's head rested on my lap. I checked my bank account again on my phone. $127. Property tax due in 5 months. $4,200. Foreclosure notice sitting on my kitchen table. I'd saved 4 lives. But in doing so, I might have destroyed my own. Looking at Shadow's peaceful face, his small chest rising and falling with each breath, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. My father had taught me that some lives were worth the risk. I just hoped I wouldn't have to prove it in a federal prison. Summer arrived in the Cascade Mountains with unexpected intensity. By July, the wolves weighed 30 to 40 pounds each, their puppy softness giving way to lean muscle. Shadow's intelligence became increasingly apparent. He learned to open the cabin door by turning the handle with his mouth, forcing me to install a deadbolt. He understood pointing and gestures, alerted me to sounds and smells I couldn't detect, and taught his siblings everything he learned. Late in July, I fell while chopping wood. My ankle twisted badly beneath me, and I went down hard, the axe flying from my hands. Pain exploded up my leg. I tried to stand but couldn't put any weight on it. The cabin was 100 yards away through thick brush. Shadow appeared immediately at my side as if he'd sensed something was wrong. He positioned himself next to me, bracing his body. I understood what he was offering. Slowly, using Shadow as support, I limped back to the cabin, one agonizing step at a time. That night, he refused to leave my side, lying across the threshold of my bedroom, guarding me while I slept. The wolf wasn't just smart, he was aware, he understood. But my financial situation was deteriorating. In August, I sold my father's camera equipment for $890. The camera had been his retirement gift to himself, top-of-the-line equipment he'd saved 2 years to buy. I used the money for meat and to keep the electricity on. My blog income had dropped to $180 a month. I began skipping meals to ensure the wolves had enough to eat. Mrs. Helen Parker at the general store knew I was struggling. She extended me credit on groceries, her kind eyes sad when she ran my purchases without payment. "Your daddy was a good man, Emma," she'd say. "We take care of our own in Timber Ridge." But I knew charity had limits. In September, everything began to unravel. I went to town for supplies and overheard Marcus Brennan talking loudly at Mackenzie's general store. He was a large man, maybe 48, with weathered features and a deep scar running from his neck to his jaw. His voice carried across the store. "I'm telling you, there's wolves back in these mountains. My cattle have been spooked. We need to do something before someone gets hurt." Mrs. Parker pulled me aside afterward, her face worried. "Don't mind Marcus. He's been paranoid about wolves since what happened to his wife and daughter 12 years ago." "What happened?" I asked, though cold dread was already settling in my stomach. "Not my story to tell, honey, but just stay away from him and keep whatever you're doing quiet." Her knowing look told me she suspected something. The bear incident happened on a cool morning in early September. I'd taken the wolves to a stream 2 miles from the cabin. They were playing in the shallow water when a black bear with 2 cubs emerged from the brush on the opposite bank. The mother bear saw us, saw the wolves near her babies, and charged without warning. I barely had time to scream before Shadow leaped between us. All 4 wolves fanned out instantly, a coordinated defensive formation I'd never taught them. They showed teeth, snarling and howling with a ferocity I'd never heard from them. The bear, outnumbered and confused by their aggression, backed down. She retreated with her cubs into the forest. Shadow had a deep claw wound on his shoulder, bleeding heavily. I called Ethan in a panic. He arrived within an hour and sutured the wound with 15 careful stitches while Shadow lay completely still, trusting my hands holding him down. "Do you understand what just happened?" Ethan asked quietly as he worked. "He literally took a hit for you. That's not training, Emma. That's love." For 2 weeks I nursed Shadow back to health, cleaning his wound twice daily, hand-feeding him when he was too weak to stand. Our bond, already strong, became unbreakable, but while I was forming my family in the forest, trouble was brewing in town. In October and November, several ranchers reported livestock disturbances. Marcus Brennan became increasingly vocal at town meetings, forming what he called a Wildlife Protection Committee. He pushed for permits to hunt wolves, claiming they were a danger to the community. Mrs. Parker warned me one afternoon, "Marcus has people riled up, honey. They're talking about organized hunts. You should stay away from town for a while." I felt the walls closing in. My wolves weren't causing the problems. Other wild wolves in the area were giving all wolves a bad reputation, but if hunting parties started combing the mountains, mine would be in danger. In December, Ethan finally told me Marcus's full story. We sat by my wood stove, the wolves sleeping around us as Ethan spoke in a low voice. 12 years ago, Marcus took his wife Catherine and their 9-year-old daughter Lily camping. They didn't know they'd set up near a wolf den with newborn pups. Middle of the night, the pack attacked their tent. I felt sick. What happened? Lily ran outside. The wolves mauled her. Marcus fought them off, nearly died himself. Those scars on his neck and shoulder, he almost bled out. Catherine was hurt, trying to protect Lily. Ethan paused, his face heavy with old grief. Lily survived physically, but psychologically she was destroyed. Severe PTSD. She's 21 now, barely functional. Can't hold a job, afraid of everything. Lives with Marcus, almost never leaves the house. And Catherine? She blamed Marcus for not protecting them better. The marriage ended in divorce 2 years later. Catherine died in 2015. Some people say it was a broken heart, but Ethan trailed off. "That's horrible," I whispered. "But my wolves didn't do that to his family." "To Marcus, all wolves are the same," Ethan said. "I'm not saying he's right to hate them, but I understand why he does." That same month, I visited my grandmother at the nursing home. Martha was having one of her confused days. When she saw me, she smiled brightly. "Sarah, you came." Sarah was my mother. My mother had been dead for 6 years. I swallowed hard and played along. "Yes, Mom. I'm here." We sat together, Martha holding my hand, talking about things that had happened 40 years ago as if they were yesterday. When the visit ended, the nursing home administrator pulled me aside. "Miss Walsh, we need to discuss Martha's care. Her insurance runs out in 6 months. The cost is $4,800 a month out of pocket." The number hit me like a physical blow. I don't have that kind of money. "I understand. We'll need to discuss alternatives. But there's something else. Martha has expressed a wish to die at home, in the cabin. It's very important to her." I nodded, unable to speak. The cabin I was about to lose to foreclosure. The cabin I might lose entirely if I went to prison for the wolves. The stakes had just doubled. I wasn't just fighting to save the wolves anymore. I was fighting to honor my grandmother's final wish, to save the only family I had left. January brought a brutal 2-week cold snap. Temperatures dropped into the 20s at night, unusual for western Washington. My supplies ran critically low. The roads were icy and impassable for 10 days. I had no propane, little firewood, and almost no food. On the 8th day, with my stomach cramping from hunger, Shadow went out alone into the cold. He was gone for 8 hours. I paced frantically, terrified he'd gotten lost or hurt. When he finally returned at dusk, he was exhausted and limping slightly, but he was dragging a small deer he'd killed. I stood in the doorway, stunned, as Shadow divided the meat at the cabin entrance. He deliberately pushed the larger portions toward me. The wolf had hunted for me. He'd understood I was hungry and had risked everything in harsh conditions to feed me. I wept as I cooked the meat that night, overwhelmed by the realization that I'd saved these animals, and now they were saving me. In March, everything came to a head. I took the wolves hiking at dawn, thinking no one would be around at that hour. I was wrong. Marcus Brennan and 2 hunters spotted us from a ridge. Later, Mrs. Parker told me they'd seen me clearly with 4 large wolves following me like a pack. Marcus reported it to Fish and Wildlife Services immediately. 3 days later, Deputy Torres visited my cabin. Her face was troubled, apologetic. "Emma, I have to investigate a complaint. You know that." "There are no wolves here, Deputy," I said, meeting her eyes steadily. She looked past me into the cabin. I'd hidden the wolves in my bedroom, but fur covered the furniture. Scratches marked the door frame. Torres was many things, but she wasn't stupid. "Emma, don't make me come back with a warrant. Please." After she left, Ethan and I discussed my limited options. I could release the wolves into the wild, but they were too habituated to humans. They might not survive. I could contact a sanctuary, but there were long waiting lists, and wolves this age were often euthanized anyway. Or I could keep hiding them, knowing I'd eventually be caught. I decided to train them for wild release. In April and May, I took the wolves 20 miles into the wilderness, left them with a cache of meat, and returned to the cabin alone. Within 24 hours, they tracked me back. Shadow led the way, and they appeared at my door as if nothing had happened. I tried twice more with the same result. On the 3rd attempt, I tried being harsh. I yelled at them, threw rocks near them, not hitting them, just trying to scare them away. Shadow simply sat down and stared at me with those amber eyes, refusing to move. I broke down crying. "I don't know how to save you." Shadow came to me immediately, placing his head in my lap. The message was clear. This is where I belong. Then, in late June, I found something that changed everything. I was cleaning out the cabin attic, looking for anything I could sell, when I discovered an old evidence bag tucked behind a box of my father's ranger equipment. Inside was a brass .308 rifle casing. The label, in my father's handwriting, read, "Evidence, Catherine Brennan, Attack Site, 2011. My blood ran cold. I spent hours researching online, finding news archives about the attack. My father had been the first responder. He'd tracked the wolf pack for months afterward, trying to understand what had happened. Someone had shot the mother wolf of my 4 cubs 3 weeks before I found them. The shell casing matched the ones found at the Catherine attack site. The devastating truth hit me. Marcus Brennan had been hunting this specific wolf bloodline for 12 years. The pack that had killed his wife was the same genetic line as my 4 wolves. Marcus had found the mother wolf and killed her. I'd saved the descendants of the animals that had destroyed his family. The moral weight of it crushed me. Had I saved innocents? Or had I protected the offspring of killers? But looking at Shadow, at Dawn curled peacefully by the fire, at Storm and Ash playing gently with each other, I knew the truth. These weren't killers. They were family. They'd never hurt anyone. They couldn't be held responsible for what their ancestors had done any more than I could be held responsible for my ancestors' mistakes. Still, the knowledge haunted me. Marcus wasn't just a man consumed by irrational hatred, and his rage had a source, a wound that had never healed. And I was protecting the very thing he'd spent 12 years trying to destroy. By August, Marcus Brennan's obsession had intensified to the point of madness. He hired a professional tracker, a grizzled man named Tom Hendricks who'd spent 30 years hunting in these mountains. Marcus set up trail cameras throughout the forest, dozens of them, blanketing the area around my cabin. He offered a $5,000 reward for information about wolf sightings. The cameras captured everything. Photos of 4 wolves near my cabin at dawn, tracks in the mud leading directly to my property, video footage of me walking with them through the meadow, Shadow at my side, the others following close behind. The evidence was irrefutable. Marcus presented everything to federal authorities in early September. Within days, a warrant was issued, federal search warrant for my property, seizure of illegal wildlife, and an arrest warrant for me. The charges were serious: harboring endangered species without permit, obstruction of justice. The wolves would be euthanized. At their age and level of human habituation, they couldn't be rehabilitated for release into the wild. On a Friday evening, September 20th, Ethan raced to my cabin. His truck skidded to a stop, spraying gravel. He burst through my door, face pale. "They're coming Monday morning," he said, breathless. "Federal agents, Fish and Wildlife, Sheriff's Department." He showed me the warrant on his phone. I read the words, but they didn't feel real. Monday, that's 3 days. 48 hours, Emma. They'll tranquilize the wolves, transport them to a federal facility in Oregon, and most likely euthanize them within a week. His voice cracked. "I'm so sorry." I felt my world collapse. "They're going to kill them." "Yes." That's when Ethan told me something I hadn't known. He sat heavily in my father's old chair, put his face in his hands, and confessed. "I lost my veterinary license 3 years ago. Medical malpractice case. A golden retriever died under my care during a routine surgery. I made a mistake, Emma. A stupid, fatal mistake." He looked up at me, eyes red. "I've been practicing illegally ever since. Helping you. Helping these wolves. It's been my way of seeking redemption. But if they catch me helping you now, I don't just lose a license I don't have anymore. I go to prison for criminal practice." I should have been angry, but all I felt was sad. Everyone in my life was broken in some way, trying to piece themselves back together. "You don't have to help anymore," I told him. "You've done enough." "Your father made me promise to look after you," Ethan said. "I won't break that promise now." Saturday morning, September 21st, I prepared for the hardest thing I'd ever done. I packed supplies for the wolves, dried meat, a tarp for shelter, everything I could carry. I planned a route to the North Cascades near the Canadian border, 30 miles into wilderness, inaccessible by vehicles. It was the only place remote enough that they might survive. I wrote letters to Ethan and Deputy Torres, accepting full responsibility for everything. I wanted them to know I'd acted alone. The wolves sensed something was wrong. Shadow stayed unnaturally close, refusing his breakfast, whining softly. His amber eyes searched my face constantly, as if trying to read my thoughts. Ash and Storm were agitated, pacing the cabin, bumping into furniture. Dawn pressed against my legs, trembling. That's when the phone rang. The nursing home. "Miss Walsh, your grandmother is asking for you. She's having a lucid moment. Very clear, very insistent. She says it's urgent. She remembers something important." My heart seized. "I'll come Tuesday. I have something I need to do first." A pause. "Emma, Martha might not have until Tuesday. The doctors think, well, They think this might be her last lucid period. I closed my eyes. The choice was impossible. Visit my grandmother, possibly for the last time, and risk being arrested before I could save the wolves, or save the wolves and miss my last chance to say goodbye. I chose the wolves. Please tell her I love her. Tell her I'll come as soon as I can. Tell her I'm sorry. The nurse's voice was gentle. I will, honey. I'm sorry. After I hung up, I checked my bank account one final time. $0. Overdrawn by $47. I'd sold everything of value except the cabin, which I didn't even own. Last week I'd pawned my mother's wedding ring, the last piece of her I had, for $340. I'd used it all for wolf food. Even if I escaped prison, I had nothing left. But looking at Shadow, at his trusting face, I knew it was worth it. We left at dawn. The journey through the mountains took 8 hours, climbing steep terrain, crossing streams, pushing through dense brush. The wolves thought it was an ordinary hike. Ash and Storm ran ahead playfully, chasing each other through the trees. Shadow stayed beside me as always, occasionally looking up as if to make sure I was okay. Dawn followed close behind, her silver coat bright in the dappled sunlight. They didn't know this was goodbye. We reached the remote valley just after 2 in the afternoon. It was the same place my father and I had camped when I was 12 before my mother died, when my family was still whole. The valley was surrounded by steep mountains, dense with old-growth forest. A creek ran through it, clear and cold. Signs of deer and elk were everywhere. Good hunting grounds. We were more than a mile from the nearest trail. No human had likely been here in years. I set up camp and built a fire. I prepared one final meal for them, cooking all the meat I'd brought. The wolves ate happily, unaware of what was coming. I watched them, memorizing every detail: Ash's playful nudge against Storm, Dawn curling into a tight ball near the fire, Shadow's steady gaze, always watching over me, always protecting. Memories flooded through me. That first night when they'd been so small and cold, barely clinging to life. Shadow's first tentative steps across my cabin floor. Dawn nearly dying from hypothermia, then slowly recovering. The countless times they'd made me laugh when I'd forgotten how. The way they'd given me a reason to wake up every morning for the past 5 months. After they ate, the wolves settled around the fire and fell asleep, exhausted from the long hike. I stayed awake watching them breathe, counting each rise and fall of Shadow's chest. At 3 in the morning, when all 4 were in deep sleep, I quietly packed my gear. I left all the meat and supplies behind, everything they'd need to survive. I moved as silently as I could, but Shadow stirred. I froze, my heart hammering. He shifted slightly, made a small sound, then settled back to sleep. His face was peaceful, trusting. That trust felt like a knife in my chest. I started walking away. Every step felt wrong. My body wanted to turn back, to run to them, to stay. But I forced myself forward, one boot in front of the other, through the darkness, away from the only family I had left. 50 yards away, I heard Shadow wake. His confused whine pierced the darkness, a sound of pure bewilderment. Then came the moment he realized I was leaving. His howl, long, mournful, echoing through the valley, was the sound of betrayal, the sound of a breaking heart. The other 3 woke and joined the chorus, 4 wolves crying out for me in the darkness. I stopped walking, tears freezing on my cheeks. Every instinct screamed at me to go back. But I kept walking. Within minutes, Shadow was tracking me. I heard all 4 of them coming through the brush. I started running, my breath coming in gasps, branches whipping at my face. Shadow caught up easily. He ran in front of me, blocking my path. The other wolves circled me, thinking this was a game, another training exercise. I fell to my knees in the dirt. Shadow nuzzled my face, his warm breath on my skin, making small, worried sounds. I pushed him away roughly. "No!" My voice broke. Shadow backed up, confused, his ears flattened, his amber eyes searched my face, trying to understand. I screamed at him, "Go away! I don't want you anymore!" I grabbed a stick and waved it at them, not hitting but threatening. I picked up rocks and threw them near the wolves, close enough to frighten them. "You're just animals. You mean nothing to me. I never wanted you. I should have left you to die." The words tasted like poison. Each one felt like a betrayal worse than death. I was destroying the trust we'd built, shattering the bond that had saved us both. Shadow stopped advancing. He sat down slowly in the dirt, just staring at me. The other three huddled behind him, confused and frightened by my sudden cruelty. For a long moment, our eyes met. Me and the wolf who'd saved me as much as I'd saved him. Understanding passed between us. Shadow knew I was lying. I could see it in his eyes. But he also understood I was determined. He understood I was trying to protect them, even though it was killing me to do it. Slowly, Shadow turned. He led his siblings back toward the valley, moving like an old, defeated animal rather than the young, strong wolf he was. He looked back once. I whispered through my tears, "I love you. I'm sorry." Then they were gone, disappearing into the forest. I collapsed in the dirt and sobbed until I had no tears left, until my body was empty of everything except pain. The return journey took 10 hours. I took a different route so the wolves couldn't easily track me, stumbling through unfamiliar terrain in the darkness. I was exhausted, hypothermic, and dehydrated by the time I reached the cabin at dawn on Sunday. I didn't care about any of it. The cabin felt dead. No wolves greeted me at the door, no sounds of life, no warm bodies pressing against my legs, no Shadow's steady presence watching over me, just silence and emptiness and the ghost of what had been my family. Reminders of them were everywhere. Chewed furniture, wolf fur clinging to the blankets, scratches on the door where Shadow used to paw to be let in, empty food bowls still sitting in the corner. I'd given up everything for them, my education, my safety, my freedom. And in the end, I'd had to give them up too. Sunday passed in a blur. I didn't eat, I didn't sleep. I sat in my father's old chair, staring at the dying fire, surrounded by memories. I considered turning myself in to the federal agents when they arrived Monday, accepting whatever punishment they gave me. At least the wolves were alive and free. That had to be enough. Sunday night brought a sudden storm. Rain hammered the cabin roof. 50-mile-per-hour winds howled around the walls, shaking the windows. The temperature dropped to 48 degrees, unseasonably cold for late September. All I could think about was whether the wolves had found shelter. Were they safe? Would they survive without me? Or had I saved them from federal euthanasia only to send them to a slower death by starvation or exposure? I couldn't sleep. I paced the cabin, praying to gods I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. At 11 o'clock, I heard a vehicle engine. Through the window, I saw headlights cutting through the rain, Marcus Brennan's truck, 3 other men with him, all carrying rifles. My blood ran cold. He'd followed me yesterday. He knew where I'd left the wolves. He'd waited for this storm, no witnesses, no way for anyone to track him in this weather. Marcus pounded on the door. "I know you're in there, Walsh." I considered not answering, but Marcus shouted again. "I saw you yesterday, saw where you left them." I opened the door. Marcus and his men pushed inside, bringing the brutal cold and rain with them. Water dripped from their coats onto my floor. "They're gone," I said, my voice hollow. "It's over." Marcus's eyes were wild, his face flushed beneath his weathered features. The scar on his neck stood out white against red skin. "Not until they're dead." "They didn't hurt your family," I said quietly. "Those were different wolves." "They're all the same." Marcus's voice cracked with years of pain and rage. He pointed his rifle at me. "Tell me exactly where they are." "No." "Tell me, or I'll shoot you for harboring them." I looked at the gun, then at Marcus's anguished face. I'd saved the wolves from death. I'd given them freedom, but I couldn't save them from this man's 12 years of unhealed wounds. Marcus forced me outside into the storm, tying my hands in front of me with rough rope. "Start walking. Show me where they are." As we marched into the wilderness, my mind raced. I couldn't lead him to the wolves, but I couldn't refuse. He would shoot me. So I led them in the wrong direction, toward more treacherous terrain, hoping to get us all lost in the storm, hoping Marcus would give up. The rain was relentless. Visibility dropped to less than 20 feet. We were all soaked within minutes, shivering, struggling through mud and underbrush. The storm worsened with each passing hour. One of Marcus's men grabbed his shoulder. "We need to turn back. This is suicide." Marcus shook him off violently. "We're not leaving until I find those animals." The terrain grew treacherous. Hidden rocks beneath wet leaves, sudden drops obscured by darkness and rain. My boot caught on something and I fell hard. My ankle twisted violently beneath me. Pain exploded up my leg like fire. I tried to stand but couldn't put any weight on it. The ankle was badly sprained, maybe broken. Marcus yanked me upright without sympathy, his grip bruising my arm. "Walk." I gasped through the pain. "I can't. I think it's broken." "Then crawl." Two of the hunters refused to go further. "Marcus, this is insane," one said, his voice tight with fear. "She's injured. We're all going to freeze to death out here. Those wolves probably died already anyway." The other added, "Let's go back before we can't find our way." Marcus turned on them, raising his rifle to his shoulder. "Nobody leaves until I say so." The hunters backed away, hands up. "You've lost your mind, Marcus." His voice was hollow, broken. "My mind was lost 12 years ago when I watched my wife die and my daughter's face get torn apart. I'm just finishing what I started." Meanwhile, at my cabin, federal agents arrived at dawn. Deputy Rachel Torres accompanied them, along with fish and wildlife officers. The lead agent knocked, announced their warrant, then forced entry when no one answered. The cabin was empty. Evidence of wolves was everywhere. Fur, scratches, chewed furniture. But no me, no wolves. "Her truck's here," Torres observed, looking out at my old pickup. "She's on foot somewhere." The lead agent looked out at the storm, rain still falling heavily. "In this weather, she won't survive long." Torres immediately radioed for search and rescue, but the response was grim. Helicopter couldn't fly in these conditions. Ground search was impossible until the storm cleared. They were looking at 6 to 8 hours minimum before they could safely begin. Torres drove straight to the nursing home. She found the administrator and asked about me. "Emma was supposed to visit her grandmother yesterday," the woman said, her face sad. "Martha had a stroke Friday night. She's been asking for Emma constantly, but Emma never came." Torres felt sick. "How is Martha?" "She's in the hospital. It doesn't look good. Maybe 24 hours left." At the hospital, Torres found Martha Walsh unconscious in the ICU, machines beeping steadily. A nurse sat beside her, holding her hand. "Has anyone contacted her granddaughter?" Torres asked. The nurse shook her head. "We've been trying to reach Emma for 2 days. No answer." Torres realized with cold certainty that both I and Marcus were out in the storm and both were probably going to die if she didn't find us. But there was nothing she could do. The storm was too severe. Ground search would just create more victims. Helicopter rescue was impossible. "God help them," Torres said quietly. "They're on their own." By Monday morning, the storm showed slight signs of clearing. The rain lessened to a drizzle, though we were all hypothermic and exhausted. I was barely conscious, my lips blue, my thoughts moving slowly through cold fog. Marcus recognized a rock formation through the mist. "This way. The valley's close." He dragged me forward. I'd tried to lead him astray, but somehow we'd ended up near the valley anyway. Either luck or Marcus's experience in these mountains had guided him true. We reached the valley. Through the drizzle, I could see the remains of my fire from Saturday, still smoldering faintly. The meat cache was mostly gone. The wolves had been here, had survived at least this long. Fresh tracks in the mud, not yet washed away by rain. Marcus's energy renewed with predatory focus. "They're here, somewhere close," he began shouting, firing his rifle into the air. The sound echoed off the valley walls, sharp and terrible. "Here! Wolves!" "Come on!" I tried to speak, but my voice came out as a whisper. "They're gone. They heard the shots and ran." Marcus looked down at me with something like madness in his eyes. "Wolves don't run from one shot. They're pack animals. They'll come back to investigate." He smiled coldly. "Or they'll come back for you." He dragged me to a tree and forced me to sit, my hands still bound. The two remaining hunters set up positions, rifles ready. Marcus commanded, "Call them." I shook my head weakly. "No." Marcus pointed the rifle directly at my head, close enough that I could see down the barrel. "Call them or die. Your choice." The impossible decision hung before me. If I called the wolves, they would come and be shot. If I didn't, Marcus would kill me. Either way, I lost everything. I looked up at Marcus through blurring vision and saw not just a man, but a soul that had been destroyed and never healed. I saw 12 years of pain that had curdled into something toxic and deadly. "You think killing them will heal you?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "I don't want healing," Marcus said. "I want justice." "This isn't justice, it's revenge. Call them, now." I took a breath, tasting blood in my mouth from my frozen, cracked lips. "No. If you want to shoot something, shoot me. I won't let you use me to kill them." Marcus's finger moved to the trigger. His hand shook slightly. "So be it." Before he could fire, a voice cut through the rain. "Dad, don't." Everyone turned. A young woman emerged from the trees, Deputy Torres close behind her. 2 federal agents followed. The woman was shaking violently, her face pale with terror. She looked about 21, with scars running down the left side of her face and neck, old wounds, badly healed. Marcus's face went white. "Lily, what are you doing here?" "She came to my house last night," Torres said. "Told me everything." Lily took a trembling step forward, the first time she'd voluntarily entered the forest in 12 years. "Dad, please stop." Marcus lowered the rifle slightly, confusion replacing rage. "Lily, you shouldn't be here. Go back. It's not safe." "I called the feds, Dad, not you." Her voice was stuttering with fear and cold. "I reported Emma's wolves." Marcus stared at his daughter. "What? Why would you?" "Because I wanted you to stop." Lily's voice broke. Tears streamed down her scarred face. 12 years, Dad. 12 years you've been hunting wolves. 12 years you haven't seen me." The truth hit Marcus like a physical blow. "I was doing this for you, for your mother, for our family." "No," Lily said, her voice gaining strength. "You were doing this for yourself. I thought if these wolves died, you'd have no more revenge left. You'd have to look at your daughter instead of your ghosts." Marcus dropped the rifle in the mud. He fell to his knees. "Lily, I was protecting you. By becoming the thing I'm afraid of. A hunter, a killer." Lily's hands trembled as she spoke. "I see her everywhere, Dad. Mom, every single day. But you don't see me. You only see what the wolves did to me." "I'm sorry," Marcus whispered. "I'm not the scared 9-year-old anymore. I'm 21. I want to live. But I can't, because you won't let 2011 die. Then Lily revealed what she'd never told him. Her voice cracked, but the words came out clear and devastating. Mom didn't die of a broken heart, Dad. She killed herself. 2015. I found her in the garage. Lily was crying openly now. You were out hunting wolves. Again. Her note said, I've lost my husband to ghosts. I've lost my daughter to fear. I have nothing left. Marcus made a sound like a wounded animal. No, Catherine. No. You never told me, because I wanted you to keep hunting, keep having purpose, Lily sobbed. But it's killing us both, Dad. I need my father, not a ghost chasing ghosts. During this exchange, a sound cut through the valley. Distant howling, getting closer. My heart shattered. No! Please, no! Through the trees, 4 shapes materialized from the mist. Shadow in the lead, massive now, his dark coat almost black against the gray landscape. Ash, Storm, and Dawn followed close behind. They had been given freedom, but they had chosen family. Even if it meant walking into death. Marcus and the hunters raised their weapons. Marcus hissed, Don't move, don't spook them, let them come closer. But the wolves weren't behaving like wild animals. They weren't snarling or showing aggression. Shadow walked forward cautiously but purposefully, ignoring the men entirely, focused only on me, tied to the tree. I screamed, my voice raw. Shadow, go! Run! All of you, run! Shadow didn't run. He continued walking directly toward me. Marcus whispered, Perfect. Just a few more steps. He aimed at Shadow's chest. I threw myself forward despite my injured ankle and bound hands, falling between Marcus and Shadow. You'll have to shoot me first. Shadow reached me and pressed his face against mine, whining softly. He licked my frozen cheeks, my forehead, making small sounds of distress. The reunion was tender, heartbreaking. He'd come back for me. Despite being given freedom, despite the cruelty I'd shown driving him away, he'd come back. I told you to stay away, I sobbed. Why did you come back? While Marcus was focused on Shadow and me, Ash and Storm moved with tactical precision through the trees, flanking the hunters from behind. One man shouted, Marcus, we got 2 more behind us. Marcus spun around. The wolves had surrounded them. 4 wolves, 4 humans. The advantage had shifted. The wolves could attack from any direction. They had the higher ground, knew the terrain, and weren't exhausted from fighting the storm. But they didn't attack. Shadow positioned himself between me and Marcus, standing firm. He didn't snarl or snap. His body language was clear. You cannot have her. Dawn stayed close to me, pressing against my legs protectively. Ash and Storm held their positions behind the hunters, ready but restrained. One hunter asked, his voice shaking, Why aren't they attacking? Marcus, confused, said, I don't know. They should be. Shadow began a low growl, not aggressive but warning. He took one deliberate step toward Marcus, then stopped. The growl grew louder. The message was unmistakable. Back away from her. Marcus kept his rifle trained on Shadow. You think I'm afraid of you? His finger tightened on the trigger. This is for Catherine, for Lily, for my family. Mr. Brennan, please, I said. Look at him. I am looking at him. I'm looking at the thing that destroyed my family. No, look at what he's not doing. Marcus paused, uncertainty flickering across his face. He could attack you right now, I continued, my voice gaining strength despite the cold. He's faster than you, stronger. He has 3 others with him. You're exhausted, hypothermic, but he's not attacking. Do you know why? Marcus's certainty wavered. Because he's waiting for the right moment. Because I taught him not to. I locked eyes with Marcus. I raised these wolves from 3 weeks old. Their mother was murdered, shot through the chest, left to die in the dirt. I gave them a choice. Trust me or die. They chose trust. Every day for 5 months I taught them that humans are not the enemy, that violence is not the answer. That family protects but doesn't destroy. Marcus stared at Shadow, really seeing him for the first time. The wolf stood calmly, not with the wild aggression of the animals that had attacked his family 12 years ago. Those wolves had been snarling, ears back, teeth bared in pure predatory rage. This wolf's ears were forward, alert but not hostile. His tail was neutral. He was protecting, not hunting. A memory surfaced in Marcus's mind. Catherine's screams, chaos, blood in the tent. But those wolves had been different, fully wild, defending their den from perceived threats. These wolves were something else entirely. "You raised them?" Marcus asked slowly, his voice uncertain. "Yes. Shadow has saved my life 3 times. From a bear, from starvation during winter, and now from you. He's protecting me. Like a dog protects its master." "No," I said firmly. "Like family protects family." Lily stepped forward then, still shaking with fear but moving toward the wolves. It was the bravest thing I'd ever seen. Shadow looked at Lily and seemed to sense her terror, Marcus's anguish, the 12 years of pain radiating from both of them. Shadow did something unexpected. He sat down, the way I'd taught him as a pup, the universal signal, "I am not a threat." Ash, Storm, and Dawn immediately sat, too, following their alpha's lead. Marcus's rifle was still raised, his hands shaking. He looked at his traumatized daughter, taking her first voluntary steps toward a wolf in 12 years. He looked at the sitting wolves. He looked at my broken body tied to a tree. He looked at his own trembling hands. His voice broke. "I just wanted him back. I wanted my son back." This was something I hadn't known. Marcus's voice cracked as he continued. "Catherine was pregnant when the wolves attacked. 3 months. We were going to name him Daniel. We lost the baby 2 days after the attack. Lost everything." He dropped the rifle in the mud and fell to his knees, sobbing. "I wanted my family back." Lily went to her father, kneeling beside him in the mud. She put her arms around him for the first time in years. "I'm here, Dad. I'm here. I never left. But you weren't looking at me. You were looking at ghosts." "I'm sorry," Marcus sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Lily." Shadow remained sitting, watching. He could have attacked at any point during Marcus's breakdown. He chose mercy instead. Perhaps he understood what Marcus didn't, that violence only creates more violence, that mercy is stronger than vengeance, that some wounds only heal through forgiveness. The federal agents moved in quickly, securing the scene. One agent approached the wolves cautiously with a tranquilizer gun ready, but Deputy Torres held up her hand. "Wait. Just wait." The wolves didn't move. They sat in the mud surrounding me, waiting to see what the humans would decide about their fate. Marcus was arrested immediately. The agents read him his rights while paramedics treated him for hypothermia and exhaustion. He was charged with assault, attempted murder, kidnapping, and reckless endangerment. He didn't resist. He just kept saying to Lily, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The paramedics came to me next, cutting the ropes from my wrists. They assessed my injuries: severe hypothermia, compound fracture of the left ankle, dehydration, multiple contusions. As they loaded me onto a stretcher, Shadow tried to follow. An agent formed a barrier. "Shadow," I whispered, barely conscious. "I'm sorry." "I love you." As the medical helicopter lifted off, the storm had cleared just enough. Shadow's howl echoed through the valley. It was a sound of longing, love, and loss. The other 3 joined the chorus, their voices rising together into the gray sky. The lead federal agent turned to Torres. "What do we do with them?" "Evidence says they're habituated to humans," Torres replied. "They can't survive fully wild. Protocol is euthanasia for animals like this." Torres looked at the 4 wolves sitting peacefully in the mud, then at the helicopter disappearing into the clouds. That girl nearly died protecting them. Those wolves chose to come back for her when they could have stayed free. Maybe we need a new protocol. I woke in the hospital, disoriented and in pain. Everything was white. White walls, white sheets, white ceiling. Deputy Torres sat in a chair beside my bed, her face tired. "The wolves?" Those were my first words. "Safe. Temporarily held at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center in Olympia." "But Emma..." She paused, her expression heavy. "Your grandmother..." My heart stopped. "Is she..." "She's here, in the ICU. She had a stroke Friday night. The doctors say it's bad." Torres wheeled me to the ICU in a wheelchair, my broken ankle in a temporary splint. Martha lay in the bed surrounded by machines, tubes running from her arms, an oxygen mask over her face. Her skin was paper-thin, almost translucent. She looked so small. A doctor approached us, his face grave. "Miss Walsh, we need to discuss end-of-life decisions. The stroke was severe. She's not waking up. Her brain activity is minimal." "No," I whispered. "She can't. I wasn't here. I didn't get to say goodbye." I took Martha's hand. It was cold, fragile as bird bones. "I'm here, Grandma. I'm so sorry I wasn't here before. I'm so sorry." Then something unexpected happened. Martha's eyes fluttered open. They were clear, focused, more lucid than I'd seen them in months. "Emma," she whispered, "you came. I'm here. I love you. I'm so sorry. The wolves..." Her voice was weak but certain. "They saved you, didn't they?" I was shocked. "You knew?" A small smile touched her lips. "I've known for months. Alzheimer's doesn't mean blind, sweetheart. I saw the fur, heard the sounds at night when I'd visit in my mind, saw the light come back to your eyes. But I broke the law. I might still go to prison." Martha squeezed my hand with surprising strength. "Your grandfather and I, we broke laws too. 1960s. Civil rights movement. We hid freedom riders in that cabin when it was dangerous to do so. Sometimes the right thing and the legal thing aren't the same. You learned that from us. From your father." "Grandma..." "My will," she interrupted, each word an effort. "There's life insurance. $50,000. I never told anyone. Wanted to surprise you someday. For your wedding, I thought. But use it now. For the wolves. Build something beautiful from all this pain. You need that money for your care. I need to know you'll be okay. That's what I need." Her breathing was labored now. "Promise me you'll forgive yourself for not being there when your mother died. When your father died. For me. Promise me you'll live, Emma. Really live." Tears streamed down my face. "I promise." Martha smiled peacefully. "That's my girl. So proud of the woman you became." Her last words came out barely audible. "Tell the wolves. Thank you for bringing my granddaughter back to life." The machines began to flatline at 4:17 p.m. on September 23, 2024. Martha Walsh, age 83. I held her hand as she passed, feeling the last warmth leave her fingers. I was completely alone now. No mother, no father, no grandmother. Just me and 4 wolves who'd chosen me as their family. 6 weeks later, I stood before a federal judge. The courtroom was packed, media, supporters, protesters holding signs both for and against me. I was charged with illegally harboring endangered species, facing up to 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. The testimony came one by one. Mrs. Helen Parker spoke about my character, her voice shaking with emotion. That girl lost everything and still chose kindness over despair. Dr. Ethan Cole explained the medical necessity of my rescue, then admitted his own illegal practice. I lost my license 3 years ago and have been practicing without it since. Helping Emma and these wolves has been my redemption. I accept whatever consequences come. Deputy Torres described Marcus's attack and the wolves' extraordinary restraint. They could have killed Marcus Brennan. They didn't. That speaks to the kind of animals they are and the kind of person who raised them. Then Dr. Patricia Walsh, a wolf biologist from the University of Washington, took the stand. These wolves are habituated to humans and cannot be fully released into the wild, but they've demonstrated no aggression toward anyone. They show extraordinary intelligence and self-control. They represent a unique opportunity to study human-wolf coexistence. They need specialized care. They need her. The courtroom went silent when Lily Brennan took the stand. Her hands shook as she sat down. This was the hardest thing she'd ever done. Being in a room full of strangers, speaking publicly for the first time in years. I was 9 years old when wolves attacked my family, she began, her voice quiet but steady. I've lived in fear for 12 years. But Emma Walsh's wolves aren't those wolves. They saved my father by not attacking him when they could have. They saved me by giving me my father back. Please don't kill them for being what we taught them to be, trusting. The public support was overwhelming. An online petition called Save Emma's Wolves had gathered 2.3 million signatures. A fundraiser for my legal fees had raised $890,000. Wildlife organizations across the country were advocating for sanctuary placement. Children had sent drawings of wolves to the courthouse, hundreds of them, covering the walls outside. The judge studied me for a long moment before speaking. Miss Walsh, you broke federal law. That's indisputable. The Endangered Species Act exists for important reasons, and individual citizens cannot simply decide which laws to follow based on personal judgment. My heart sank. However, he continued, you also saved 4 lives that would have been lost. You demonstrated that even wild creatures can learn mercy and restraint. The court recognizes that this case presents exceptional circumstances. He paused, then delivered his verdict. Guilty with exceptional circumstances, $5,000 fine, 200 hours of community service, 2 years probation, no prison time. The courtroom erupted in applause. I felt my legs go weak with relief. However, the judge added, and the room quieted, the wolves must be transferred to a certified sanctuary. They cannot remain in your private care under current law. Then he added with the slightest smile, but nothing in this ruling says you can't work at that sanctuary. 3 months later, Marcus received his sentence. Suspended sentence with 2 years probation, mandatory therapy with Lily, 500 hours of community service, and required attendance at grief counseling. There was a restraining order keeping him from me unless I agreed to lift it. In February, Marcus came to visit me. Lily was with him. It was the first time we'd seen each other since the valley. The meeting was awkward, tense. I'm sorry, Marcus said. For everything. How's Lily? I asked, looking at the young woman beside him. Marcus's eyes were clearer now, less haunted. We started therapy together. Family counseling. She went outside yesterday for the first time in years, walked to the mailbox by herself. Seemed small, but I was so proud of her. I told her so. First time I've said that since... since before." He paused, struggling with words. "You were right, Emma. Killing those wolves wouldn't have healed anything, would have just created more pain. Lily helped me see that I wasn't hunting wolves. I was running from grief, from guilt, from myself, Catherine and the baby we lost. I never let myself mourn them properly, just turned pain into rage." Then he offered something I never expected. "I can't undo what I did. To you, to the wolves, to my family, but I want to help if you'll let me. The sanctuary you're building, my ranch has 500 acres, 200 acres on the north border by the forest. It's yours, for the wolves, no charge, no conditions, just let me do something right." Tears filled my eyes. "Marcus, you don't have to." "I do. Please, let me try to be better." 4 months after the trial, in March 2025, Wolf Haven Sanctuary opened on Marcus's donated land. Built with my grandmother's $50,000 inheritance and the money from crowdfunding, the sanctuary covered 200 acres of protected forest. It was state-of-the-art, designed specifically for wolves who couldn't survive in the wild but deserved to live with dignity. Opening day brought 300 people. Media covered the story. Wildlife officials and politicians gave speeches. Mrs. Parker was there, Ethan, Rachel Torres. Lily stood with her father, her first public appearance in years. I stood at the podium, still using a cane from my ankle injury, and addressed the crowd. 2 years ago, I found 4 dying wolf cubs next to their murdered mother. I broke the law to save them. They broke my heart to save me. This sanctuary isn't just for them, it's for all of us. It's proof that mercy is stronger than vengeance. That family isn't defined by blood, but by choice. That even the wildest hearts can learn to trust again." My voice broke with emotion. "My grandmother Martha taught me that sometimes the right thing and the legal thing aren't the same. Today, they finally are. This sanctuary is named the Martha Walsh Wolf Haven in her memory." Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. The gates to the wolf enclosure opened. I entered alone while the crowd watched. 50 acres of protected forest stretched before me under spring sunshine. I walked into the meadow, my heart pounding. Shadow appeared from across the clearing. When he saw me, he ran at full speed. Some people in the crowd gasped, fearing he would attack. Shadow stopped just short of me and sat down, remembering his training. His tail wagged furiously. I laughed through tears. "Good boy." I wrapped my arms around his neck, burying my face in his fur. Ash, Storm, and Dawn raced over, all pressing close, whining with joy, tails wagging, licking my face. All 4 were healthy and happy, living in a natural environment where they could be wolves while staying near the human who'd saved them. The sanctuary director approached me. "There's something you should see." She led me to an enclosed den area. Inside, Dawn lay with 3 tiny wolf pups, born 2 weeks earlier, healthy and thriving. Dawn looked at me, protective but trusting, and allowed me to approach. I knelt beside them, seeing 3 tiny faces with closed eyes and soft fur. "They're beautiful." "Dawn wouldn't let anyone near them except you," the director said. "She was waiting for you." It was perfect symmetry, just as I'd found Shadow, Ash, Storm, and Dawn as orphans. Now I was witnessing new life, a new beginning, the cycle of loss and love and hope continuing. Marcus stood at the fence with Lily, watching. I saw tears on his face as he observed the peace, the joy, the family that had formed. Lily squeezed his hand. "That could be us someday, Dad. Different kind of healing, different kind of family. But healing. Finally." "Yes," Marcus said quietly. finally. 6 months later, in September 2025, exactly 2 years after I'd found the wolves, the sanctuary was thriving. I lived on site as director, making a modest $45,000 salary. I'd paid off all my debts. The cabin was saved and converted into a visitor center in Martha's memory. School groups visited weekly to learn about wolf conservation. I taught children about coexistence, about mercy, about family. Shadow often demonstrated during programs, showing that wolves and humans could live in peace. Lily volunteered twice weekly, slowly healing her relationship with wolves. The first time she touched Shadow's fur, she cried for an hour. "He's so gentle," she whispered. "They're not what I remembered." Now she advocated for wolf conservation, speaking at schools about PTSD recovery and the power of forgiveness. Marcus built a viewing platform on his ranch property, allowing controlled wolf-watching tours. The income helped fund the sanctuary. He attended therapy regularly. His relationship with Lily grew stronger every day. "I spent 12 years hunting," he told me once. "Now I spend my days protecting. It's a better way to honor Catherine and Daniel, our lost son. They wouldn't have wanted this hatred." One evening, I sat in the meadow at sunset, with 4 adult wolves around me and 3 cubs playing nearby. Shadow's head rested in my lap. I wrote in my journal words that would become a blog post read by millions. People ask if I regret saving them, breaking the law, losing everything. I tell them I didn't lose everything. I lost all the wrong things and found all the right ones. Family isn't always the one we're born into. Sometimes it's the one that chooses us. Sometimes it has 4 legs and amber eyes, and sometimes that's exactly what we need. The sun set over the Cascade Mountains, painting the sky gold and pink. Shadow looked up at me with those knowing eyes. I smiled. We were home. Sometimes the greatest losses lead us to our greatest loves. Emma's story reminds us that family isn't always the one we're born into. Sometimes it's the one that chooses us when we need it most. In her darkest hour, when she'd lost her parents and felt utterly alone, 4 helpless creatures gave her what she'd forgotten: a reason to wake up each morning. She risked everything: her freedom, her future, her last dollar, because love demanded it. And here's the beautiful truth: those wolves loved her back with the same fierce devotion. Shadow didn't return because of training or instinct. He returned because family means showing up even when it's dangerous, even when it costs everything. Marcus learned after 12 years of grief that healing doesn't come from revenge. It comes from letting go, from choosing mercy over bitterness. His daughter Lily found her voice again, not through hate, but through witnessing forgiveness in action. We all carry wounds. We all face impossible choices between what's legal and what's right. But Emma's journey proves that when we choose compassion, even when it's hard, even when we're scared, we don't just save others, we save ourselves. What would you risk everything for? Have you ever experienced a love so loyal it changed who you were? Share your story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.